Now let's start talking about some elephants in the room and start making some comparisons to Nolan. Let's have this outline versus Nolan. First of all, the translation that is not even translation, it's an interpretation, if that, because it's more of an indoctrination that the film has been based on. We have seen her talk about things, and I'm going to go at some point into actually analyzing her entire work, and if I have time for it, because if I'm bored and I realize that she's way gone, I'm like, I'm not going to bother with this shit. I have the whole outline of what the Odyssey is. How about it, people? Check it out and enjoy it, okay? I'm not going to go down the route of, wasting my time on someone that has completely lost the ball and they're completely out there. What I'm trying to say here is, and what I think is obvious, is that this entire story, once you put it all down and you put it all together, I think it's pretty obvious what it's actually symbolizing. So when I hear certain things like, Penelope, she's objectified and she's a housewife and the suitors are trying to win her over and all these weird things that she's trying to do, and she's constantly changing things with regards to what the symbolism is. It shows to me that you didn't understand what the story was in the first place, or you didn't care about what the story was in the first place. I would say even more, because if she has the audacity to turn around and argue that a lot of the translations don't do the work justice and they don't do a right translation, that means that you've probably read those translations, right? Or did you not read any of them at all and you're just making shit up? Which one of the two is it? Did you read them and you just ignore it and you did not agree? Or did you not read any of it and you're like, you know what, this is a great story for us to hijack, let's just ruin it. And here's the point of why it's happening, which I've gone into talking about before as well. Let's not beat around the bush. Hollywood is that of Satan, okay? Like, do you want us to go into all the conspiracy theories now so I can just, make this whole video talk about something completely different? Because that's the point of this video. And if you haven't realized and you haven't seen it by this point, I don't know where the fuck you've been living, but we've known this for years, some of us a decade or more, and then a lot more people for at least 6-7 years have seen a lot of things and know a lot of things, and for the last 5 to 6 years a lot of that information has been coming out, and now it's reached the point that it's actually slapping you in the face for the last, I don't know, about 6 months, I would argue. It's reached the point where you have no excuse anymore to not understand what's going on here. And I think that it's pretty obvious, because what is this story? It's a story for every single one of us. A chart, a map. Is it one of the best maps of, with regards to the soul and how to return back to the light? I'd say it's pretty good. I'd say it does a pretty good job. It's like, compared to some other metaphysical readings and other things that I've done, I would say that I have seen some much more hectic shit out there. But for its time and as a mythology and all that stuff, I'd say that it does a pretty darn good job. And regardless, it is pretty simple. And even if you adhere to half the things that it says in here, it's going to make you a better person. And what this is actually invoking is the return to the light, the return home. It stands within reason, and I think that it's pretty obvious at this point why those of Hollywood would want to ruin and destroy a story like this, and defile it, and change the meaning into a whole bunch of different ways. And how do you defile something? By not respecting it, by changing the meanings, by hiding the meanings, because Hollywood, if they are, again, that of darkness, they're like, well, this is a story that actually elevates people and can help them transcend or open their mind or so many more things. Well, we don't want to focus on that, do we? That's one thing. The second thing is that once you're not respecting a certain work and you're defiling it, you're going to try to defile it in every single way possible, because it's a mockery at this point. And that's what Satanism does, and that's what those of Satan, those of the devil do. They get whatever is that of the light and they mock it, okay? It's a mockery. It's not just inclusion. It has nothing to do with inclusion. When you cast in the place of Helen of Troy a black African female, you couldn't be any more further away from respecting the material. You're completely disrespecting it. You're completely throwing out the window the written text, and you're making it obvious at this point and evident that you don't care what the text and what the descriptions are saying. It's just your own rendition, which, by the way, he could have said Nolan's interpretation of the Odyssey or some other crazy shit. But the point is, like, why would you even do that? Nobody cares about seeing your modern day take and interpretation of the Odyssey. Nobody cares. Everybody wants to see some fantasy, some myth, whatever. I mean, what is it? You don't have the money with millions and millions of dollars to make your costumes look like shit, to make things look out of the age that they're supposed to be in. You're making like the Sicilian giants, they're making them look like they're mecha warriors or they're, full steel clad medieval soldiers. You're making the ships look as if they're Viking ships. You're making crazy helmets and Batman-looking stuff. Everything looks cheap and nothing about it looks historically accurate. Even the walls and even the props look bad. The lighting looks bad. Like some of the acting looks bad. The dialogue looks bad. You have actors that are all over the place, cast all over the place. You look at Pattinson, it looks like he's wearing a biker suit on him. Robert Pattinson doesn't even look like he fits into the role. Like everybody looks as if you're just looking. Oh, yeah, it's Tom Holland. Oh, yeah, it's Zendaya. Oh, it's Robert Pattinson. Oh, it's like every single character that I've seen so far in the trailers. And the new trailer, by the way, dropped today, and it showed us nothing new. It's the same thing. So they've got nothing to show in this. You know what I mean? Unless if they're keeping all their best shots for I don't know, like the last trailer with the Trojan horse or something like that. Which, by the way. Okay, I mean, I can, like, that they pulled it out of the sea and they brought it in. That is a kind of creative kind of decision that I could be okay with. I'd be like, you know what, you're not screwing the story here. You're not going out of your way to disrespect it. You just had an idea, you had a vision, and you wanted to creatively add to it, and and have your own flavor in there. So it does have your kind of your aspects in them as a director. I understand something like that, which is completely inaccurate with regards to what actually happened and how it was described. But still, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't really change much of the actual story itself, you know what I mean? So you're disrespecting all these things. You're disrespecting the story. You're disrespecting all the props look like shit. Everything is like, you have millions and millions of dollars here. Could you make it any more obvious that you don't really care about this? Not a single Greek has been actually cast in the film at all. You're making Helen of Troy, which is one of the biggest symbols of, ancient Greek mythology with regards to, her beauty and her fairness, and she was blonde and all that stuff. You're making her black. You got, I saw another scene which, we're so hot over so many other stuff that we don't even notice it. And as Odysseus is running around, he has a black person next to him as a soldier, or was it Mexican? I don't know. It's like, where are you getting all these people from? We're like, is there any Greeks in here? Behind that, it looked like a couple of Anglo-Saxons. It looks like I'm looking like a half British army, or I don't know what the hell I was looking at. Like a modern rendition. Like I don't know. I don't even know what I'm looking at this point. And you're changing all the story. You're changing all the symbolisms. You're getting rid of the symbolism, and you're focusing on completely different things on purpose to change what the story is supposed to be and meant to be about. Oh, but it's fantasy. Rant over. Let's chill out a little bit. Anyway, that's a good segue to bring me up into the next part. Let's just, calm the tone down a little bit. Just thinking about it, I was good. I was good for 12, 13 videos. I was talking about the Odyssey. You saw how calm I became. As soon as I started talking about Nolan, I'm like, whoa! Anyway, let's calm down again a little bit. Anyway, so once the disrespect continues and goes on, then we start going into the excuse land. This is the area where we start making all these excuses and making things up as we go to justify our actions. They start using excuses such as, it's just fantasy, it's just mythology, it's just this, it's just that. As I stated in another video, this mythology is part of Greek heritage and Greek culture, thus part of Greek history for 2,700 years. It has been recited in this way and in this manner, this specific story with these specific symbolisms over and over again for 2,700 years. You don't get to change the symbolism, first of all, and second of all, if you want to have inclusion, you don't get to not represent the actual Hellenic people in one of their own works. And no, I'm not okay with changing characters at all. I don't care about, there are some people that are like, you know what? If they were true to the word, and they would do that for the cases where they would cast a white person for a black historical figure, then I'd be okay with it. Me, I'm not okay with it in either case. If it's a historical figure that is black of color, of skin color, cast it with a black person. If it's a historical figure that is that of white skin color, cast it with a white skin color. And this is the other debate that a lot of people have, that it's not history. It is history. It's based on actual existing characters. Odysseus existed, Helen of Troy existed, Agamemnon existed, Achilles existed. They all existed. Now, which level they have been exaggerated or not in the stories is a completely different situation, first of all. Second of all, even if it's just fiction, which for the most part, the Odyssey itself is to a very large extent fiction, and it's symbolism. It's still part of a heritage and a culture and a history, and it's not your history. It's part of, just like I've said in another video, all history of every country does belong overall to the world heritage, but ultimately it belongs to specific people. I can't just go and get Miyamoto Musashi and change him into Italian, because hey, it's just, and in those cases it's cultural appropriation, is it? But in this case here now, where you have completely acted deliberately as if the Hellenes don't even exist anymore, where we are still here, we have still continued, we haven't stopped existing, and acting as if this is not cultural appropriation, Minorities don't even mean anything to you at this point. Why? Because we're not a majority. We are a minority on this planet. So that doesn't mean anything to you either. What is your core behind all this, or why you're doing all this? You're trying to ruin Western civilization. And one could argue that Hellas was the birthplace of Western civilization. And a lot of the symbolisms and a lot of the stories that they had were that of light. So they're trying to destroy those symbolisms. And that's what they're doing. They're showing disrespect. They're changing the story. They're trying to put the focus point in different locations. First of all, what the hell is Achilles even doing in this story, if he is in the story? I guess in the underworld. Okay, yeah. I mean, he does show up in the underworld. I mean, how long is this film going to be? Even at 3 hours, it's not enough to actually have all the 12 trials. But anyway, how they're actually going to depict all these things is going to be completely beyond me. The trailer looks like trash. The way they talk in the dialogue looks like trash. Like, actors don't fit and don't suit in anything. They have done race swapping all over the place. There's not a single Greek lead or Greek actor in any one, or Hellenic actor in any one of the roles. And it's based on a feminist take that has completely lost perception of what this story is truly all about. I reserve the right to actually be corrected once the film comes out. And maybe it's like, you know what? Okay, it's got some feminist things in there, but for the most part, he did kind of show the trials. 70% at least. If it's not above 70%, then it's trash. It's just using a little bit for just, throwing, just for, virtue signaling, just throwing a couple of nuggets in there. If it's not above 70, 75, 80% minimum, showing the trials as they were, then the whole film is trash. So there is a chance that maybe it's got some bad symbolism in there. That's, they change certain things around. But for the most part, 75 to 80% of the film and the story stays intact. Then I'd say, okay, it's not a good job. It's a pretty terrible job, but it's not as bad as we expected it to be. Which of course we expect it to be very bad, because once you see all the things that you've seen, and once you hear all the lectures of, with regards to what this book is based on, and once you see all the pushback, and once you see them completely disrespecting, and this is one of the biggest points here, they're making such a big point with regards to respecting cultures. I guess ancient Greece and ancient Hellas and the Hellenic culture is not in the list of cultures that we're supposed to be respecting. So let's just change it all completely. Let's change the story. Let's change the characters. Let's just cast whatever the hell is in there, and let's just make sure that we don't cast a single Hellenic person in it. Why not, right? Which I would argue there shouldn't be a single. Actually, there are, I think, a couple of black people in this story, by the way. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's at least one or two. I think one at least. Ethiopian in the story of the Iliad and the Odyssey. But anyway, they could have, like, if they wanted to, they could have cast someone of color that would have actually fit into the story in the part that it's supposed to be. But anyway, I'm of the mind that if there's no person of color in the story, don't put a single one. I don't care. Don't mark your quota. I don't give a shit about your quotas and your check boxes. I don't give a shit. The same way that if I see a film that is, a story of the shogun in Japan, I don't want to see any white people in there, unless if it was a period that there were white people. I don't want to see any black people in there. I don't want to see any white people in there. I want to see anybody else other than Japanese people. If I'm going to see a Japanese myth, if I'm going to see a story in Africa, in ancient Africa, I want it to be, again, unless there's some white people there, which, again, if you're in a story that has no white people, I don't want to see any white people, or any Asian people, or anything like that. I want to see just black people. Why? Because it's their story. You give me a story about the Mayans, okay? Then I want to see just the Mayans. Stop shoehorning and race swapping and all that stuff. Now, if you shoehorn something and you make your own story, and you're like, you know what, we're going to create a couple of Ethiopians and we're going to add them into the story and all that stuff, I could be okay with that, because you're creating new characters and it is your own take, and it's like, okay, they go in order to create some inclusivity and to have some, more races in the film. It is kind of like a bit of an interpretation at that point, and they could have, like represent them in some parts here and there, not as main characters, but represent them, because they were, like, the ancient Hellenes did know about the Ethiopians, and there were kind of stories that actually make reference to them as well. So I'd be okay with that. But to actually outright race swap significant figures and characters within Hellenic mythology and Hellenic history is completely out there. Completely out there. And then we also have the other argument that they've changed it so many times. The bards, that was happening up to 750, 700 BC. For 2,700 years, the story has remained intact. And that's why it's called Homer's Iliad and Homer's Odyssey. Because that's the story that we're basing it on. I don't want to hear all those excuses and bad examples with regards to what was happening before the story. The written word of this story was written 2,700 years ago. Overall, I hope this film bombs hard. The people that should see it should only be the people that are movie critics that we trust. People like Metatron. He's not a movie critic, but he's a history critic. And I expect to see him, because he is going to go see it, as he said. He has to, in order to, tell the rest of us if we can or if we can't see it. And I trust his opinion 100% because he actually deep dives into history. So, I hope the film tanks completely. If not for nothing else, for the fact of the matter that they completely race-swapped and disrespected the entire Hellenic heritage within this story and this work. And by the looks of it, from what we've seen in the trailers, it doesn't look good. It doesn't respect any of the imagery. And by the sounds of it, from all the things that we've heard of the actual book and the actual work that it's been based on, it's completely ruining the symbolism and taking it in a completely different direction to what the actual story is. I mean, when your main concern in a conference, when you're talking about the Odyssey, is talking about, oh, these translations are all wrong, and then, they are glorifying war, which, by the way, first trial, it's actually showing how bad war is, and that was the whole point. He had to snap out of it. You clearly have no idea what you're talking about. And they are anti-feminine and anti-female, and Penelope is just a trophy and a housewife. That's like your focal point of what you're talking about, instead of, hey, this is a story about the soul returning home. This is the story about the conscious mind returning back to the spirit and to the soul. This is the story about returning to the light. Penelope symbolizes the light and the spirit and the soul. Instead of talking about that, which we have known for over 2,000 years, you focus on every kind of modern interpretation that your indoctrinated mind can come up with. Then how good can this film be? Like, seriously, how good can this film be? Here's another good one in today's trailer, so I'm going to add this into this video as well as I'm editing, that just dropped. Something about him defying the gods, and something about him, at some point where he cuts the head off of a statue. Why would they do that? I've said in some other videos that the light is the light. It didn't start because they've created a conflict and a rift between even ancient Hellas and modern Hellas with regards to the religions, the Pantheon and the Olympians and Christ and Christianity. When it's the same thing, it's all together. Christ is king. Christ is the pinnacle. Christ did not create light when he came. Light existed, and he said it himself. We are all of the light. We are all brothers and sisters. Our Father created us all equal in imagery and blah, blah, blah. It's not like Christ was born and the light all of a sudden started existing. And for those people that don't believe in Christ, because I'm telling you, there's a rift here. Like, there's the people that believe in the ancient Olympians and all that stuff. Here in Hellas, we have groups like that as well. Them as well, it's as if, the light stops at Christ. No, it's a continuation. The light is the light. It just finds different ways to manifest. In my personal beliefs, Christ is king, Christ is the pinnacle, and it is the same light, and they're all joined and united into one, and they're all talking about the same thing. It's just that obviously before Christ they were all of the light, and they were all different stories, and they were trying to different symbolisms, and that's why there's so many things that are so similar in all these stories. Again, as I was throwing all over the place during the entire series of videos, I was throwing some correlations in there. There's a lot more of that in there. There's a lot more in that story alone, much less if you go into all of ancient Hellenic mythology. And if you look into all of that, there's so much philosophy there, and there's so many things that of the light, it is a continuation. It's just that we're slowly getting more and more refined, and then when Christ was born, that's when it reached its pinnacle. And now we have, again, an entire rift that was actually created within that. The ancient Greeks did not believe in worshipping the gods. Actually, they did. But later on, the philosophers were like, don't worship the gods and blah, blah, blah. There's Plato and so on and so forth. And it was all about, also if you look into specific religions, Hermes Trismegistos, and there were some other readings as well. And again, the philosophers, where they would talk about the one single divine, which is again what Christ was talking about. There's a lot here in there that you can see how there is, just like today, we have Satanists, we have people that believe in different gods, we have people that believe in one god, people that, and there's a division in all these belief systems regardless. The same thing would happen almost back in the day as well, There were cults, there were dark cults, there were both good and bad things happening at the same time. And then, of course, there was the manipulation of people, and then, of course, there were people that would just, there's a lot of people that they just want to believe in something and make things simpler for them, for their life, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, however, all these things are connected and united under the light. And the symbolism of the Olympians, that's why they became 12. There were a lot more Olympians, so why were they, just 12? There were beings that came down to bring the light and to actually, I would argue, prepare the way for someone like Christ to be able to be born on planet Earth. Because it's all about frequency, it's all about a lot of things. And it's not by chance that through the Greek language, the Hellenic language, Christianity has been spread to the rest of the world. So thank you. But because of us, thanks to us, once again, you're all Christian. Okay? So let's not just keep dividing things all over the place and then throw symbolism and defy the gods. That's not what the story was about. And I have another video coming up soon, which I haven't actually recorded yet, where I'm talking about the ancient Hellenic gods and what their symbolism means. Again, the true essence overall in the end, because they did do, kind of like there were worshiping cases as well, but there were also cases where it wasn't really much as worshiping, but it was symbolism, that they would use the symbolism to elevate their conscious mind in, again, it's symbolism. And I'm going to go through some videos where that's probably going to be the next series that I'm going to make at some point, once I relax and chill out a little bit from this, where I'm going to go into certain gods and what their symbolisms are, and especially some gods that they have tried to defile and make them completely different to what they actually are. Why? Because they have certain qualities, spiritual qualities, that are actually things that we should adhere to, or that we should strive for or towards. And they're trying to defile all the symbolisms, so we are against the ancient Hellenic gods or whatever else the case may be. Create dogmatic, narrow-minded, single-minded kind of people. And this way they have their fingers into everything. Now, we get the religious people to hate it. We get the atheists to hate it. We get the Nolanites and the woke people to hate it. Basically, the whole idea is cut off as much information as you can from the Hellenic mythology, because there's a lot in there that could bring you enlightenment. And as I've said before, the truth unites, lies divide, and they don't want these truths to unite us. It's not just ancient Greek or ancient Hellenic mythology. Zoroastrianism and other ancient religions as well, even from the East. You have any idea how many Christians believe, not all of them, but there are many Christians in Hellas as well, that they believe that the Eastern religions, like people are possessed and that they're demonic, pretty much, that of darkness. See what they've done to this world? Light has been expressed in so many different ways, in so many different cultures, and I'm not saying that all of them are correct. I'm saying the light. You have to find the light, because there are situations where it's just that of darkness and that of shadow. But once you actually take the stories that are of light, it's not that hard. Just look at what it's telling you. After a point, you start seeing the patterns and you realize, you know what? I'm seeing this specific lesson in ancient Hellenic mythology. I'm seeing it in Christianism. I'm seeing it in Buddhism. I'm seeing it here. I'm seeing it there. Maybe this is a lot truer than I think it is. But by creating all these divisions, and then by cutting out the symbolisms, then creating other things such as, for example, indoctrinating with regards to, for example, the Bible as a symbolic book as well in a lot of cases, as literal, then they create a rift with science. Like, there's so many things that they're doing here. They're constantly compartmentalizing and cutting everything off all over the place, so you don't do the connections. That's what you're supposed to be doing, though. Be vigilant, as I've been saying in all these videos. Connect the dots. That's why the ancient Hellenic mythology and a lot in it is very important, because it is that of the light. And then you combine it. You combine it with the things that Christ said. You combine it with other pieces of light. Believe me, it will take you on a whole different place. And then you'll see it completely different. You're like, it's like all these beings of light, because not these cultures of light, because again, in each culture, historically, and even now and all the time, there's darkness, there's light, there's everything. But all these beings of light, once you start to identify them, it's as if they're like a big family. And you're like, okay, Christ is king, but they're still like a big family. They make it sound as if like it's a family, and all the siblings are evil, and there's only one of them that's correct. Meanwhile, they're all talking about the same thing. They came from the same father, and they're all reciting in their own way, as far as they could possibly understand. That's why I say Christ is king, because the level that was unmatched with any previous experiences. Even though there have been some references to the resurrection in ancient Hellenic mythology. Look into ancient Hellenic mythology. You'll see some shit. You'll see some shit. And Christ came and did it in action. You'll see some shit. truth unites, and if we all unite within the light, again, I made an entire video on this, they can't stop us. That's what they're trying to do. They're constantly trying to divide it. And that's why they're attacking this story, that story, especially Hellenic mythology. They've completely butchered it. And I'm actually going to reveal what the first video that I'm going to make is. It's about Ares. They've made Ares into such an evil figure. I'm going to make a video to debunk it and show you why all that is bullshit. I mean, I just touched on one story, which is the Odyssey, and it was a very simple story, relatively, and I didn't even go into every single symbolism. Like, there's a lot in the whole story. Each chapter is like pretty big. I just gave you the outline, and even that has so much in it. That's one myth. You have any idea how many myths ancient Hellas has? So I saw that as well in the trailer. I'm like, you guys are like, you're going out of your way here to create even more disrespect to what the story is about, and even more negativity towards certain symbolisms with regards to the light. Regardless of where it comes from, light is light, whether it was in a prehistorical period, pre-Christ, BC, which means that obviously it will be the light would still come, and it will still be in connection. There will still be information from the light, and within the light that can be experienced and explored and expressed, but it's of a different form because it's before Christ. It's still the light. It's still the same thing. They're trying to slowly cut off all these symbolisms. When you sit and you're spending your time talking about the shit that you're talking about on your conference with regards to what your Odyssey translation is about and why the rest got them wrong, and you're missing the main point of what the story is about, how good can your film be? Like, honestly. Are we that crazy? I'm reserving like my expectation of being wrong on this, and all of us being wrong on all this, is like a 3% chance. Now, having done this entire series, to make it a little bit simpler with regards to how these videos work, because some people I noticed they were asking me, what's the order? This is the first video, which is the story of Odysseus and Penelope, and it's the outline of the entire story, and it talks about also the suitors and all that stuff. Then there's the second video, which goes into the analysis of the trial of the axes, what it symbolizes, and exactly what that is all about. And so those first two videos that start the entire series, and they are the entire general story of, the end story, and that encapsulates what this entire story is about. That is where the biggest deep dive and the biggest symbolism resides. After those first two videos, in order, there are 12 more videos, one for each trial. We go through each one of those trials, and for each trial I have a synopsis, and then I have the symbolism / interpretation / analysis of that synopsis of the story. So that's 14 videos up to that point. Okay, 12 plus the first two, 14. Then it's the synopsis. That's the next video after all those 14. And this video here, which is bringing it all together, and also giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about Nolan and why they're disrespecting this story so much. Now, again, could we be wrong, and could the story be much better? I mean, yeah, to a certain degree. The things that we have seen, you can't take them back. Gender swapping, race swap, and taking the focus into a completely different direction, you've lost the ball at this point. If you want to know the true story of the Odyssey, you don't want to take my interpretation for face value, go do your own research. After enough research, you come full circle around, and believe me, you'll come back to this video and you'll see the synopsis, how I laid it all out, and you'll be like, yeah, it makes sense, yeah, that's what it's about. Do your own research, unbiased research, and see all the different kind of symbolisms. Maybe there's a couple of differences here and there, but overall, when you look at the entire through line, you're like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious what the story is about. If it's not at the very least 70 to 75% of this story, then the film is a tragedy. And I am almost, I'm not going to say 100% certain, because you never know. I'm 95% certain though, which is pretty high, that it's not even going to be 50% the same as what the actual story is. 95% certain. Because we know who Hollywood is. And because they have shown their intentions, up front they have shown their intentions with showing us what their focuses are for this film and what the direction for this film is. And it's not even the first time that they're doing this. In a lot of films, we've seen who they are, we've seen the true colors. Every now and then, a pretty good gem slips through the cracks, every now and then. Especially the ones that are not so obvious, where their messaging isn't as obvious, because they want to have their hands clean and be like, in terms of, free will and karma and all that stuff, whatever you want to call it. It's like, hey, we warned the people, we told them, we showed them the signs, and they didn't care. Look into that. That's how they work. This isn't the only film it's happened in. And this isn't the only like genre that it happens in, like for ancient Hellenic, kind of mythologies. Like they've done this for years for a lot of films and a lot of messaging that they've done over and over and over again. So, and once you start seeing a lot of these and start connecting the dots, there are the outlier exceptions, and then there's the core body work. And you look at the core body work, and you're like, oh, okay, I see where this is going. This concludes the entire kind of analysis for all this. I could go on for hours to talk about a lot of stuff. There are some people that are saying, the black people are closer to... There's so many things to talk about this. Honestly, that it's like after a point, you look at how many excuses they try to make with regards to trying to excuse Nolan's decisions and choices. And at the end of the day, they all fall flat and they all fall short. And even if I constantly extend an olive branch in every single case, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it's just completely made up fiction. Okay, what gives you the right to change fiction? A fiction that has been part of a culture and its history for over 2,500 years. Over 2,500 years. Total 3,000 years. But in written word, over 2,500 years. What gives you the right to change that story? What gives you the right to not represent, okay, whatever, let's make it inclusive to the entire world. This isn't a story that includes the entire world. It's a story in ancient Hellas. So I want to see ancient Hellas. And that's as far as it goes. Boom. End of story. I don't care about anything else. When I go watch, again, Miyamoto Musashi, I want to see a story about Japan. I don't want to see a story about the entire world. Those are just keywords, modern audiences, that's just keywords for them to slowly change, dilute history, dilute stories, dilute mythologies, and change their meanings and their symbolisms in a manner for modern audiences. Basically, it's a form for them to excuse their indoctrination and representing all these works differently to what they were initially supposed to be represented, and taking the focus point of what these works are supposed to tell us and what their whole symbolism is behind them, taking them to a completely different direction. That's what this is all about. And I've talked about this in the first videos that I made. Ancient Hellenic mythology is a gold mine. They could be making millions upon billions if they just made films on ancient Greek mythology. Why don't we see that many? I've explained why. Because they don't want to represent it as it is. And that's also why they're trying to hijack it and talk about Black Athenas. And they're trying to say all these lies with regards to that we are Africans. Science, DNA, culture, heritage, all the information that has been written historically, and so much more says otherwise. Actual findings, they all say otherwise. Debunking your theories, not 100%, 200%. It's not even a joke. It's not even a joke to entertain. Clearly, you're trying to hijack a history, a culture, a people, and erase them pretty much from existence at this point. And it shows, because everything's a reflection of what you're truly trying to do, Mr. Nolan and Hollywood. So, I'll leave it at that. A bit of a larger video because, again, this was bringing it all back with our conversation with regards to Nolan and Hollywood. And if it hasn't become evident at this point, maybe you're not ready to see it, I guess. But if it hasn't become evident at this point how vile and evil Hollywood is and why they destroy not just Hellenic culture, but especially Hellenic culture, but they do this for other cultures as well. If it hasn't become obvious at this point, I really don't know what kind of reasoning and logic you have access to be able to go from point A to point B in your life, because these things are pretty darn simple. I think I made it pretty clear and obvious how all this through line connects and how it makes it one cohesive story. And by extension, small commentary of why Hollywood doesn't give a fuck. And they do not respect these works at all. They're trying to hijack our culture. They're trying to erase our culture. They're trying to change it. And ultimately say that the Hellenes weren't even Hellenes. They were from Zimbabwe, apparently. You can't make this shit up. The more all you of the shadow are trying to indoctrinate us and hit us over the head with false information, and you keep saying a lie over and over again until it becomes true, the more we will fight back and respond and remind people what the truth actually is. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Until next time, I hope to see you even more enlightened and more vigilant with every passing day of your life. Till then, peace be with you. I have a cricket standing on my lemonade. Yeah, it's hot. It actually came in here to stand on my lemonade, like the bottle. Actually, I paused the video at some point because I saw it was jumping around and it flew in and it had cobwebs stuck on it, and I picked it up and I cleaned the cobwebs off it, and I let the little guy out on the balcony, and he came back inside. Now he's standing on my lemonade, on the lemonade bowl. He's trying to find a way inside it. I'm half expecting to walk outside and see Mordor at some point and a big volcano to explode. That's how hot it feels. Anyway,